take care of this set of people, and you're not thinking about the country as a whole. And when people see that, they tend not to, go along with anything you do, even if it's in their best interest.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely correct, and that is why, as I said, that's why I believe that politicians from both political parties, Republicans and Democrats alike, play a role in this, because at the end of the day, just because you're a Democrat, when you live in a congressional district, you represent the people who also didn't vote for you. Just like I want to run for office one day, and I'm a Republican. Let's say I do get elected. I don't just represent the people who voted for me. I don't just vote on policies that benefit the people who agree with everything that I agree with. Because I recognize that there are a whole host of other people who don't see things the same way, who do not view the world the way I view, and I have to take that in and keep that into consideration constantly. That is the burden of a leader, to constantly be able to think and have to think about all the others who don't view things your way, all the others who don't share your same values and belief systems. And if you're not doing that, you're not being an effective leader.
The other hard part is the voting situation.
Hey, Tyrone, I'm going to let you go, man. I appreciate you for calling. Thank you so much. Let's go to Edward in Queens.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing great, Edward. Thanks for calling.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to start off by saying I'm a 35-year-old black male Trump supporter, and I live in New York City. Obviously, I didn't actually hear if you had said it or not, because I just heard the beep. But anyway, the thing that I wanted to say is about your comment and the person that you were speaking to who spoke for a long time. The major problem is the media here. And the problem is, like you were talking about the fact that our Congress people can't talk together, can't work together. The only reason why that is so is because the media has them all under a magnifying glass. And the moment that one of them does something that they know that we won't agree with or that we will agree with, they're broadcasting it to whip us up into a fury. And you see it on Facebook, because I'm lucky enough to have been born in the 80s as a millennial, and I've seen the progression of the media and what they've done to other presidents, Clinton and George W. Bush. And the problem is they're whipping us up into a frenzy. They're keeping us divided to the point where, okay, my opinion's my opinion, F yourself, and this, that, and other, just like the last caller said. And ultimately, when you add that to the fact that there's not term limits that apply to the presidency, the 22nd Amendment, what you get is career politicians who half of us hate the other half, and we want to get rid of them, but we can't. But those people are representing the people who are their constituents, and those people hate our half. And it just so happens all these people are still screaming about impeachment of Trump. Mm-hmm. I don't seem to understand why they don't seem to get the fact that with the Republican-controlled majority, it's not going to happen. But let me just say, what will happen is exactly what happened the day Comey was testifying. While you have one thing going on, behind that, you have them removing Dodd-Frank Act. And nobody noticed it because they're so busy hoping that Comey is going to say the key words that are magically going to get Trump impeached. The media is your problem. That is your real problem. So what would you like to say about that?
No, I appreciate you for calling, and I think as a commentator on air, Edward, there's a responsibility that I feel. And every time I go on CNN, and I always tell people this, I always say, man, when I watch you on TV, you're always serious. You never get into the shouting matches with people. You talk facts. You offer your perspective based on how you assess and analyze things. And I said, of course I do. I said, because I have an obligation, because I recognize when I'm on CNN and millions of people are watching me, they're watching me because they want to hear my perspective based on my experience as a consultant, but also as a Republican. And with that comes great responsibility that I don't take lightly, even on this radio show. Sometimes I have a lot of fun, and sometimes I get angry and upset, but this is something I take serious, these conversations, because I do recognize that people listen to these programs, or they watch TV, and they have those conversations with friends and their loved ones, their co-workers, people in their community. And so I recognize, in knowing and understanding all of those things, that I have a responsibility to live up to, and I try my best every single time to do it. I don't always get it right, but I do try the best I can, and I think that's a responsibility for everyone in the media.
Own show on Sirius XM.
Working on it, man. It's coming soon. We're hoping for August. Keeping my fingers crossed.
I'm glad to see that the Armstrong Williams show and people like you are able to come on, because I started listening to Sirius XM slightly before Trump won.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a lineup like Joe Madison and then Karen Hunter, they used to have Maggie Linton, but apparently she wasn't angry enough for them, so they switched her with Laura Coates. And now you have constant Trump bashing right up until about 6 o'clock. And then when your show come on, that's the only time that a Trump supporter can actually call and get a whole sentence out without either being shouted down by one of those three people I mentioned, or being hung up on, and then they pretend that we're the person who hung up because we didn't have anything to say, but they dropped the phone call, and we're sitting there like, oh, well, how did it hang up? And it's so disgusting the way they play it. But then you look at CNN, you look at Fox, they do the exact same thing when somebody's just trying to get a small point.
Well, Edward, this is what I'll say before I let you go. I can't speak for other people. I know Karen Hunter. I've been on her show twice. Our politics aren't always the same. I don't think we would agree on everything politically, but she is someone that I like. She is someone that I respect. I can't speak to how Karen Hunter runs her show because it's the Karen Hunter show. I can't speak to how Joe Madison runs his show. I don't know him at all. I do know Laura Coates. Laura and I used to do a lot of television together before she became a CNN commentator, prior to when I joined to CNN as a commentator, and she is someone I respect. She is someone that I like, but I can't dictate to another how they run their show, their programming, or how they conduct themselves. But I can speak to how I conduct myself. I can speak to how I will run this show when I'm hosting this show, and that's all I can do. I won't get into criticizing and critiquing others, what they do, what they should do, because I'm not in the business of that. But what I do know on this show, when I'm on, I'm going to do the best I can to welcome all people, regardless of if they voted for Trump or if they did not vote for Trump, because I think we need to have those types of dialogues and conversations if we are to truly understand one another. And the minute we begin to dismiss that is the minute we continue the furtherance of the division and chaos that we see today. So, Edward, I appreciate you for calling. Guys, we got to take a quick break. This is your host, Michael Singleton, filling in for my good mentor, Armstrong Williams. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right, folks, we're back. This is your host, Michael Singleton, filling in for Armstrong Williams. Thanks for listening to the show on SiriusXM Urban View. And if you're on social media, follow me on Facebook or follow me on Twitter at SherMichael, at SherMichael, at SherMichael, SherMichael, and don't forget the underscore. Connect with me on Twitter. I'd love to continue the dialogue after the show. Let's go to David in Sacramento. David, you're on with SherMichael. Thanks for calling. Oh, David sounds like he's at the airport or at the train station. So, Kelsey, figure out what's going on with David. We will come back to him. Let's go to Chad in Virginia. Hey, Chad.
Yes.
You're on.
Oh, hi. My name's Chad. I'm from Virginia. Thanks for taking me on your show.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Well, I've been listening to your callers today and listening to your show, and I caught the Karen Hunter show immediately prior to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to agree with pretty much everything that's been said by almost every caller and pretty much everything you said. It's a combination of issues. We have Karen Hunter made a very good point on her show,
mm-hmm.
that a lot of what she does for the ratings, much like Alex Jones admitted on his show, that InfoWars show.
Mm-hmm.
They, to a large degree, the commentators in the news want to get ratings, so I believe, personally, that they tend to inflame issues and make mountains out of molehills at times in order to get the ratings for their programs and keep themselves on the air. And then the politicians like to divide us and point us at each other. They try to almost weaponize the information, use extremely inflammatory language, and you end up with crazy people
that end up killing people or trying to kill people at baseball games because they don't believe what they have to say. And I do agree. We have to bring the rhetoric down. We have to come together.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that when I engage with liberals at work on issues like that are close to us, family and jobs and things like that, we agree. And that's one of the reasons I voted for Trump, was mainly because of his populist message of, hey, look, we need jobs here in America.
Mm-hmm.
We can't continue to outsource.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been both Democrats and Republicans both who have created the policies in the field for us to lose our jobs effectively.
Right. Well, no, I understand what you're saying, and I empathize with it, and I appreciate you for calling the show. And, hey, continue to be a listener. Chad out of Virginia. Thanks so much. You can control is yourself, and regardless of what you hear on TV, regardless of what you hear on radio, the burden that we should all place upon ourselves, what we should reflect on in our moments of time is, what am I doing to further the conversation in a way that may be more conducive for better dialogue, that may be more conducive to bringing people together? Because the people on TV, those are few individuals. They can't do it all. Exactly. It also starts with us. But hey, David out of Sacramento, I appreciate you for calling. I'm looking at my call screen. I was looking at my laptop. This is going to be interesting. Let's go to Karen Hunter. Karen Hunter on the show. Karen, thanks for calling.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think it's funny that people can call up your show and indiscriminately lie and not be checked. You know me well enough to know
I do.
You know me well enough to know that I don't do anything for ratings. I probably do one of the most authentic shows that's anywhere on radio.
Mm-hmm,
Everything I do comes from a point of empowerment, and I speak truth, and I correct myself if I'm wrong. So to have somebody call up the Armstrong-Williams show, and I know you guys like to let people talk, but at some point propaganda, to compare me to Alex Jones, and you just said, okay, well, I get your point, and let them go on. We have to check and challenge people who use our airwaves to spread lies and propaganda.
Well, I think
that guy lied.
I think Karen
didn't get checked.
Well, no. That's not true, because I told him, I said, I've been on Karen Hunter's show, and I know Karen Hunter.
The last guy that you just had on before this guy, you let him say, I called Karen. First of all, he didn't call my show. I never said anything about radio.
You're talking about the guy from New York.
Yeah. I called the Karen Hunter show, and she pretty much admitted that she does.
Yeah, he mentioned your show. He mentioned Joe Madison. He mentioned Laura Coates. He mentioned all kind of things.
So he's a propagandist trying to spread
well, yeah. I mean, but Karen, that's what people do. And as I told him, I said,
our responsibility, sitting in the seats that we sit in, to check and challenge for the benefit of our audience, and not let people use our airwaves to spread lies.
Well, no, I do agree with that. And as I told him, when he referenced you, I spoke to your character from what I know. I spoke to Laura Coates from what I know. I defended CNN from what I know. I said, but I am one individual. I can't dictate people's perspective on what they think they believe from what they hear. That is their choice. And as I told him, I said, I think, as I just told the last caller, I think the people who are on these platforms, whether it's a CNN, whether it's a Sirius XM, I think we all recognize that we have a responsibility to the people who are watching us on TV or listening to us on the radio. And again, as I said to the last guy, maybe I'm naive in believing this. Maybe people will say, oh, Shermichael's young, he doesn't quite get it. Maybe I am, and I'm going to continue to believe that most of us, like yourself, Karen, and like your Laura Coates, who is someone that I do know and respect, do recognize the responsibility that we have by being on such platforms.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's about age and inexperience and naivete. It's about respect for what I think we all do, from Joe Madison to, throughout the day, which is speak truth to power. Urban View, more so probably than any other channel that we have on Sirius XM, is devoted and committed to empowerment. And to have somebody, because it sounds like they don't even listen to any of the shows, because you could not compare somebody like me to Alex Jones if you listen to the show every day. So clearly he had an agenda. And to not check and challenge him really is a disappointment, quite frankly. I was sitting there, I'm listening, I'm like, okay, how long is this going to go on?
Well, look, I think we let people voice their opinions. I don't always agree with them. People say a lot of things, as I know they do on your show. And one of the beautiful...
I don't allow, and again, everybody runs their show differently, but I don't let people come on my show and lie.
Well, look,
I just don't.
Karen, I understand.
I just think it does a disservice to the people who are listening, especially when you know the truth. And as far as it relates to my show, you listen to it enough. You know the truth.
And which is why I said, again, to your show and to Laura Coates' show, and to CNN, which is somewhere where I'm on frequently, that from my experience, which I shared. Now, again, I understand you didn't like what the guy said. That you have every right, and you are entitled to do that. And I will challenge people on the things from my experience, such as with you, or such as with a Laura, or such as with a CNN. But I did give him the opportunity to voice his opinion because I want to hear what he had to say, whether I agreed with it or not. And I checked him when I thought it was appropriate.
Let's agree to do this because this is something that's one of my pet peeves.
Okay.
You know, since we're part of the same channel,
yes.
And I don't let anybody call up talking about anybody's show. You
right.
can't call
right.
up my show talk about Howard Stern. You can't talk about Bevy Smith. You're not going to call up my show and talk about anybody else's show and what they're doing because I don't have a responsibility to anybody else's show. You can call
That's
up
fair.
and challenge
That's
me,
fair.
but I think if we have a rule that we don't let people talk about other people's show and just shut that down, if you have a comment or question about what I'm doing, then let's talk about what I'm doing. In
I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that. Or at least check them.
Otherwise, you're letting people slander and defame people who don't deserve to have that happen to them.
Well, we're definitely
hearing people out. It's not right.
Well, we're definitely not gonna allow that. I don't think we've ever allowed that. I think we've always allowed people to voice their views. But I do think when they get into that room of disrespecting people, whether it's presidents, whether it's political leaders, whether it's hosts of shows, I do think we have a responsibility of critiquing them. I do think we have a responsibility to speak out in support of those people, particularly when they're people that we know. And that is a responsibility, as I stated with the last caller, that I think we all have, and I think we acknowledge that.
There's a difference between criticizing public figures, heads of state, folks that are in government, and criticizing our brethren who put in a lot of work on these shows. I just think there needs to be a line drawn in the sand as it relates to those of us who host shows, those of us who are responsible for airwaves, that I don't let anybody ever call up and say anything disparaging about any. I will say something disparaging, but I don't let callers call up and disparage anybody, even if I agree with them. Because
I think that's a right you have. I do agree with that.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Good job.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. That's Karen Hunter, guys. And as I said to the guy, Chad, and as you guys can hear, Karen was very upset. And I do understand and I empathize with that because, as I told the guy, I've been on her show twice. And as I said, I don't always agree with her politically. But I like her show. Even with Laura Coates, I don't always agree with Laura politically, but I personally like her show. And as I stated, I think we all recognize that we have that responsibility to our host, or to our listeners, rather. I think, again, to the folks on TV, I think they have a responsibility to the listeners to make sure that what we're putting out there is fair, is accurate. And the fact of the matter is, guys, you're not going to always like it. That's okay. I recognize it. I'm a Republican. You can only imagine many of the things I have heard throughout my very young career that people don't like or disparaging. And I listen to it, I hear it, and sometimes I let it bother me, sometimes I don't, but I keep it moving forward. And that's one thing I respect about Karen, is that even if she doesn't agree with something, she will voice her opinion. She will say, I don't like this. She will say, I disagree with this. But she continues to move forward because there are a lot of people who appreciate her voice. But again, at the end of the day, as I told the last guy before Karen called, you have to ask, we all, I don't want to say you, we all have to ask ourselves, what is our responsibility as individuals as it pertains to the overall dialogues that we have? Let's go to our next caller. Let's go to Robert in Alabama.